interpreter here, I'm honored to be able to lead this ceremony today. It is a wreath-laying ceremony in which we pay tribute to General George Washington and also to his wife, Martha Washington. George Washington died in 1799, and his body was placed in the old tomb just up that pathway. In his will, he asked that this new tomb be built here. It was completed in 1831, and all the bodies that were in the old tomb were moved here. In 1839, a man named John Struthers designed and made the sarcophagi that you see here in the foyer of this vault. At that time, George Washington's body and his wife, Martha Washington's body, were placed in these sarcophagi. When you come forward later, you will see that George Washington's body rests in the sarcophagus on the right, Mrs. Washington's body in the sarcophagus on the left. There's a black door at the back, and behind that is a very spacious vault in which rest 25 of the bodies of their family members. Now, why do we honor George Washington? For many, many reasons. But let me just share a couple of those reasons with you. He fought for 8.5 years to win independence from Britain for the United States of America. And after he had won the war, the rest of the world was fairly confident he would make himself the king. That's just how things were done. But that is not what he had been fighting for. He was inspired by the Enlightenment philosophy of his time and believed that human beings had natural rights. He had fought not to be king, but for the right for citizens to lead the country. And so when he resigned his commission, he returned here to his beloved Mount Vernon and returned to farming. He would be called upon to be our first citizen leader, and he served just 2 terms as president. Many people wanted him to serve for the rest of his life, but he did not think that the test of democracy was in its first election, but rather its second. And so he stepped down so that he could witness that peaceful transition of power between himself and John Adams, our second president. We take those peaceful transitions between presidents for granted, but we owe them to the example set by George Washington. Now, today, these people who have served their country in the United States military, and a friend of ours from Australia, whose father served her country, and whose dream was to come here and pay tribute to George Washington, but who sadly died before he was able to do so. She has joined us today to participate in this ceremony. I'm going to ask each of these people to introduce themselves to you and to state their branch of service. And following the ceremony, they will be lining up for you to come forward and shake their hands and thank them for their service. Sir.
David Carter from Kentucky, past Grand Master, Air Force.
Ben Stewart, Omaha, Nebraska, United States Marine Corps.
Brooks Collins, Elizabethtown, Kentucky, U.S. Army.
Megan Gilman, Melbourne, Australia, Leggett.
Randy Skinner, Irvington, Kentucky, U.S. Army.
Maxine Skinner, Arlington, Kentucky, U.S. Army Security Agency, and I was stationed here at Green Hill Farm Station.
May we give them a hand?
Yeah.
Now, one of you who feels very confident with 18th century language will be asked to read George Washington's prayer for his country. Who would like to volunteer? Not just yet, sir. All right? You can be prepared. Now, 3 at a time, we're going to take the wreath into the tomb, and then whoever wants to take a photograph. So will you 3? One of you step behind here, then one to each side. And then we'll take the wreath in, just a short distance and place it equidistant between the two sarcophagi and then stand for your photos to be taken. So you may do so now. That's good. And look out. Bring it back out, please. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll hold this while the three of you go in, and then if the three of you would step over here, please. Hold on a second, sir. Let these folks join you. All right. There we go. Thank you. Their photographers all in place. All right. Now, you may leave the wreath there. And then if you'll step out. Sure. So before he reads this, George Washington was in New York waiting to sign the peace treaty with England. And the war had been over for about 2 years, and he became concerned that the former colonies might wish to separate yet again, rather than staying together as they had fought to become the United States of America. And so he wrote a letter to all the various states asking for their unity. The letter has been edited and turned into what is now called George Washington's Prayer for His Country. This officer will now read it to us. Could we please be in an attitude of prayer?
George Washington's prayer for his country. I now make my earnest prayer that God would have the United States in his holy protection, that he would incline our hearts as citizens to cultivate the spirit of subordination, obedience to government, to entertain a brotherly affection of love for one another, for their fellow citizens of the United States and large, and particularly for the brethren who have served in the field, and finally, that he would most graciously be pleased to dispose of us all, to do justice, to love, and mercy, and to demean ourselves with the charity of humility, pacific temper of mind, with the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without a humble intimidation of those examples for things we can never hope to be as a happy nation. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all so much. Now, if you will stand here, I'm going to give each of you a copy of that prayer, all right? Thank you so very much.